Hello everyone, my name is Boris, and today I decided to do another VOD review of Wasian Iverson, as he was absolutely dominating the last patch, winning the America's TPC, and let's see how he transitions into the new one. We are playing on the LeBlanc encounter, therefore we can possibly expect some crazy combos from the early augments. And I would also like to use this time to thank for all the support I have had over the last couple of weeks, and I hope that we all can learn something from these videos. We do start with the Ionia pair, and as he checked already, it's a XP Ionia, definitely want to lean into that. As the cap from Ionia is generally achieved through one of these econ generating ones. In the other ones we might consider leaning into something like a Yasuo reroll. Now, from the components we unfortunately have a Kraken, which since its nerfs hasn't been as great of a Yunara item. Coming up on the augment, we do get offered Ruin King. Generally would have wished to have a little bit more Viego copies, as that's one of the augments you wish to hit very early on with. Hard Bargain is something you can consider from a loose streak spot, and we do not have pairs. However, I know that all the pros prefer to play on ladder with high tempo and be in control of their components. Birthday Reunion is another thing that we could consider for the tempo. However, with the level 9 cost increase and the fast night comps not really playing around the legendary soup as much, it can also be quite risky. So let's see what he defaults to first here. I'm gonna do a little scout around to see if perhaps Ionia is contested or something else might be contested. Speedy double kill is something that is also a little bit risky, and we do not have an upgraded unit to capitalize off of it right now, and if you're not able to cash it out, it's quite weak. Instead, we decide to go with Infinity Protection. We have a weaker opener, so we might play for a lost streak and see if we can stabilize during stage 3. And Spear's Will would have not given us a proper slam right now either, even though with the recent changes to Jhin, he's a little bit less reliant on attack speed. So I assume we're just going to sack here, and we opt to... Okay, we did not hold on to the rest of the units yet. Coming up on the second augment, now we're leaning into the loose streak. We might consider an econ option, since we are going to be getting combat power from our augment later on. Definitely not taking Prize Fighter, and Pandora's generally wish to play into a 1-cost reroll. Do get offered Trials of Twilight, however our components are not working out. It's something that could work with Infinity Protection, but we would generally wish to be playing this into the Demacia line, and with Infinity Protection we wish to have more frontline threats than just one that benefit from that attack speed. Therefore I would be assuming we take Raining Golds here, since we are on the lost streak. With the Trials of Twilight you want to be able to be playing it ideally from a 2-star Zinzao, so you can get some tempo here, as you are going to be behind tempo until he transforms to Zaheen. So you need to hit early, and you want to leverage the HP lead you've managed to establish in the earlier stages of the game. However, when there's 2 augments like this, and we're essentially a gold augment down until the end of stage 3, it's not something for us to consider right now. Instead, we're just going to be playing pretty much open, holding on to the possible outs. Now, it seems that... I perhaps missed if he already plannered it, but it seems to be that we might be leaning into a Warwick angle, since it appeared that we had a Blitz in our team planner as well. Or it could be also some form of a Slayer board, perhaps. We have a Kraken that, even though its nerfs is quite good on something like a Belvet still, I would say it's probably her second best after a QSS. However, we opt to not pick up a GP here, so I'm considering that we might be leaning into Warwick. This is the first day of the patch hitting the live server, so I would assume that he is trying to see if he can limit test some of the potential loose streak lines, as having an option to fall back to when you're loose streaking is always great. I would imagine Kais to be another one right now. Unfortunately, we did miss GP2 here, which would have been able to perhaps string together some wins. However, we can just always say it's one of the same GP came back. It's no worries. We did this in otherwise opts to go for a Jinx off the carousel and picking up another bow. Now, the unlock condition for Warwick has also changed. You're no longer required any form of star levels on the unit, on the Vi or Jinx. You simply need to have a single item on both of them. So, with another bow, we have the possibility to perhaps enable Jinx as a potential secondary carry. As Warwick's best generally is BT and Titans, and then you can usually gonna pair that with Sterek, since that synergizes with your BT and gives him a little bit more damage. However, also Triforce is quite good in Warwick, therefore we might just opt to place that. And the second bow could transform into some form of Jinx item. When we are playing from these loose streak spots, we generally wish to see ways how we can stabilize on stage 3. Also, picking up a bow here enables us to potentially play for an Echo as well. Echo is great with Triforce, that's another fact. And the reroll out is always good from a low streak spot. It's another one of those things that we're looking for. Do get dropped a Ginsu's. And do get a Jinx pair as well. Another tier. Now, Echo's main item is Titans. You are very free to play Echo without a Ginsu's. It's a great early game item, especially since it enables the scaling, but late game you would even prefer something like a GS or maybe a JG on the Echo itself. I'm gonna end up with a 6 loss here, and our final augment is going to be on the natural 3-2 slot. So now we might be considering to potentially see if we can stabilize, otherwise we're starting to bleed a little too much of an HP. Salvage bin is something that perhaps can fix some of our components through an extra item and allows us to slam whatever now to stabilize and later on figure out our items. Bramble West would enable us to have another frontline item, however we do not really seem to have a frontliner. Last second save in your general combat augment wouldn't be the worst, but I believe at this point we have the econ, we know we're gonna have some combat incoming through the Triforce. Therefore, we are looking for, I would assume, it's something that salvages our items. Now, salvage bin in general, better option. However, we could have also opted for portable forge. There are a few other good artifacts on Warwick, such as Hydra, for example, or Dust Defiance. However, with one, we are just sufficient, and then, yeah, now we can just simply slam our items. I'm going to just make a blue buff to toss on the Y for now. Try to see if we can start stabilizing our board, and going to unlock a Warwick next turn as well. Hence why we leveled also to level 7 right away. End up on a 7 loss streak, so we are dipping quite low. However, I would imagine we might perhaps even roll a little bit here. Also unlocked Singe through here, and we also hit the Jinx 2 in the shop. Now I believe our board should be quite stable. Gonna just slot in 6 zone for now, as does our best board, and we do not need to waste any more gold. He checks the lobby and assumes that this should be enough. I'm going to keep the items on Jinx 2. These are great items for the Jinx. And perhaps later on could even be transitioned to something as Kindred. Because the Jinx unit is still, in my opinion, slightly understated. As in when the later fights pick up on pace, like, she's never going to really achieve her final state. As in when she actually starts doing damage. Therefore, I believe it's better to play for a different endgame carry, and that's why I believe Jinx 3 hasn't really been a thing all around. Going to opt to complete another item instead, rather than starting to transition the items just yet. To the Warwick, gonna slam a vow. It's going to help that Vi gets a little more CC through. As at this point in the game, our main goal is to stall as long as for this Jinx as we can, and then let her just go rapid. Managed to pick up a win against an interesting board from the other player. Solo played into Bramble, into the epic rolldown. Gonna see what they end up playing into. Also managed to unlock an Oriana, which is another unlock condition that changed. It simply now requires 2 items on a Piltover unit. Check the power mode, and we unfortunately did not hit the blast shields, as blast shields are just the strongest thing in the game in my opinion right now. However, the damage mod is going to help us get through, as Warwick also has resets that give more attack speed even to Jinx and Vi. Now also we can make note here that Kai'Sa now is also level 7 unlock, which is another possibility you can play for as a lose streak out. Due to you being just able to unlock Kai'Sa, and Kai'Sa 1 is miles better than Cog 2. And then you get a Rift Herald unlock as well after 3-5 if you've slotted in Void 2-1. Now we did get another Prismatic Orb, which now we seem to be in a position where our tank items are also sorted. 4 Belt Prismatic Orb. Could also transition that into Processable Sterax if we wanted to, but yeah, as we mentioned, BT and Titans, and then you just toss in an artifact. That's gonna do it. Make some tank items, just gonna slot them on Taric right now. Taric, with his recent changes, good tank in stage 4, however falls off later on very much, as before his power budget was in the ability that he was able to essentially stall for 2.5 seconds independent of what items he had. Now you do need some items on him, and the healing is not really that much. So we're probably looking to see if we can drop him. Going on our roll down, picking up a Shyvana, which is also another neat thing with Shyvana change, with her aura resisting through her death now, which I believe is the biggest buff for these aura champions, because all of these aura champions receive this buff. However, if your Skarner died, you pretty much had lost the fight already, most likely. However, Shyvana jumps in and tends to die herself, but the aura she provides is insanely strong. Therefore, with her being with her aura resisting, it's simply a damage reduction, 10% if I believe, to the whole team, which is very, very, very strong. Now, opted to slam another Titans, which we can salvage later on. However, it's decent items to complete and slam for tempo right here. There are pans on the carousel, and yeah, we're gonna go for a pan, because we can make one of the stronger emblems in the game, which would be the Quick Striker emblem. And that will allow us to also enable Quick Striker for Warwick. This is one of the trickier things about the Warwick comp. In the earlier versions, it was play around with Freljord, where you would be able to enable Quick Striker through an Ashe. However, with the zone buffs, I believe the Warwick line has fully transitioned out from playing into Freljord, and now you have the tricky bit of how do we slot in a Quick Striker before we get to the Kindred. Well, an emblem is definitely going to enable that for us. Otherwise, I do not believe there to be really that many options, so you're simply having to run a Warwick without a Quick Striker. Or, well, there is an option how you can also play it, perhaps through, if we manage to get to a Swain, which is highly contested unit, and then play through with the Draven pairing, and we can toss in a Scion for the Mundo. That is one of the ways we could do it. Going up against the Kai'Sa 2 and the Rift Herald 2, and we do manage to get behind. Now, this is one of the things to note of the Singed positioning. If we generally have Singed positioned in the same side as enemy carry, he still has the targeting options of being able to pull the enemy carry out from the corner, and this sometimes enables Warwick to be able to wrap on the enemy backline. Going to slam here and even Shroud, which is going to sort the Sunder for us. Hope to make another Titans. Well, we salvaged the previous one to be able to make a Quick Striker emblem, so we're just going to transition back to Titans. A good frontline option, but I am interested to see if we perhaps pivot out of 5 zone, or how do we decide to cap this board. Another Kaisa, so heavily contested as a possibility right now. This one was from the Evolve and Overcome, and we do manage to pick up a tight round here, completing a 5 streak for us. And now we should have enough gold to potentially push level 9. However, now that we have a little win streak, we could perhaps consider to drop around. We can scout around to see if the level is actually necessary for us to pick up any rounds. And trying to see if we can get on the other side. Now, with Warwick, you also wish to generally be on the same side as enemy carry, which enables those wraps. However, you have to be wary of being stuck on the very strong tanks, such as the one with the Rom here, which has the Bramble Augment, and that would definitely hurt us. Gonna roll down here, and we're trying to slot in the built-over version with Azir. However, then we find our Kindred and opt to transition into 3 Quick Striker instead. Now, we did hover that we wish to play Senna, so let's see if we do go for another Aura champion. Managed to unlock now Ziggs, and there is a Disruptor emblem as well. Well, if we had held on to that Azir, we could have perhaps considered this as a possibility. However, now I imagine we might have went for another damage item. However, yeah, because we have the Sunfire. Perhaps we value the Swain as that much. Or, well, okay, we're just gonna reforge. Another Titans pops out. Can't seem to escape the Titans in this game. Facing an Ionia board, we managed to proc the set fast, which might be a little scary for us, but turns out no. The extra damage reduction from Zoan and the Shyvana aura very, very much allows us to have a sustainable frontline, even with Singed being our main tank. Which is something I would have not imagined myself. I haven't had many games where I would have opted to play around the Singed main tank. Managed to dodge an eco here. Unfortunately, the Nidalee makes our Warwick wrap all the way to the Tryndamere. And we did manage to survive through it with a Kindred ult. And that allowed us to stall long enough to be able to take down the Tryndamere board and secure a top 4 right here. Now, we did not pick up the Ziggs. I'm interested if we're considering going for a Ziggs after all. Roll down here to pick up some of our upgrades. Managed to hit the Kindred too. Going to probably transition items over, and now we have the salvage bin where we can consider if we are going to remake any of the items, but we opt not to. And we're instead just gonna slack on the guard breaker, a decent damage item on the Kindred. Now another very close fight against the Void board. Our Warwick did manage to take the backline Ziggs out just before dying, which managed to stall the enemies and reduce the damage and have our frontline live long enough. Opting to transition the Quick Striker emblem instead on the Jinx here, as I would assume she just simply assumed to do more damage that way. Again fighting the Tryndamere board, however now with the cap of a Kindred 2, we seem to be able to outrun it. Not sure of the amount of stacks, however, and they have also playing the interesting version of the Nidalee, which is a very strong Tryndamere board. However, with the Triforce Augment, we do seem to have more combat power, and they have a collector. Their Ash itemization is a little sus to say the least. The fighting the Rio, the fight is quite a lot closer. However, Kindred 2 is simply such much more damage, and we are in the top 2. Going to have our IE denied, which could have been a possibility. Instead, it's going to grab another Last Whisper to ensure our Thunder lives and simply provides us another form of shred. Sorry, Thunder. Now again on the, he does seem to oftentimes opt to rather prefer to be on the weak side, it seems. Not sure if it's simply how the positioning has worked out. However, our Warwick manages to take down the Kaisa board. And that's gonna be it. Wasian manages to pick up a nice win, to recognizing at what point he needs to stabilize his board and playing around his components very well, but when being offered a salvage bin. I would like to thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one. Peace.